Welcome, Justin. So glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So today we'll be talking about Kintsugi. You just told me how to pronounce it. Is that correct? Because already now I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's correct. It's
Okay, awesome.
Kintsugi. That's correct.
Kintsugi. Yeah. Awesome. It's a beautiful word. And that stands for the Japanese art of mending pottery with gold. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about it and what it means. I know it's a Japanese tradition. I know very little else.
It's quite interesting, and I'm sure someone out there who's Japanese would be like, "Oh, it's not pronounced Kintsugi; it's pronounced Kintsugi or something like that." That's okay. I'm up for any kind of correction on pronunciation. But as it's understood and where its roots come from is actually the philosophy that Japan has on. It's called wabi sabi, which is the beauty in imperfections as well. And it's a philosophy that encompasses many things. And one of them is kintsugi, the idea that something is beautiful and you can appreciate its aesthetic for its imperfect nature, like a tree that grows crooked. It's not a perfect tree in the sense that we would think about it aesthetically. And so that wabi-sabi philosophy, the appreciation of that which is imperfect, impermanent, or incomplete, is actually what is at the forefront of this philosophy. And kintsugi is one expression of that, where, of course, taking an object and once it's broken, even just a small chip on, let's say, a pottery cup, repairing that chip with a type of gold. Essentially, it's a resin that they use, something like that, some type of glue, but they put gold in it as well, so that it becomes a feature, not a flaw. So there's that concept as well of, how do we change a bug into a feature?
That's beautiful. It feels to me like by adding that gold, it makes it more precious. Right. Adds that precious piece of it. I'm so curious, Justin, how did you learn about this tradition and what has resonated with you about it?
I first learned about it about 2 or 3 years ago is when it really came into my world. I mean, I can point at movies that I've watched, when I was a kid that had this in it, that now I'm much more aware of it. I notice it in those movies where it was just something in the background. So it was about 2 years ago. There was a friend in my life who used to drink tea every time I was on a call with him. And, he was very much into Zen and all his tea ceremonies and things like that. And we started conversations around other things, around minimalism. And so there's another Japanese art called furoshiki, which is literally gift wrapping things in cloth. So cool. Let's say your lunch or a gift to someone, or, there are actually furoshiki tutorials on YouTube to make a backpack out of a large towel. It just blew my mind, because then you don't have to throw away things like Christmas wrappings. It's literally this idea for the last 3 years, we've never bought wrapping paper. We have some furoshiki cloth, and then, we tie it up, we make a nice little gift wrap, and the person gets it and they open it up. And if they want to keep the furoshiki, cloth, that's fine. Otherwise, we just take it back. It's just a square piece of cloth. That's all it is. And it came about like that. And what resonated with me the most was this idea that humans view ourselves as somehow things happen and we regret it or we wish it hadn't happened. And a lot of that time, it's that alignment of desire versus actually what would define us. And that balance between desire and definition, what we actually find is that the spontaneous events that are way out of our control that happen to us tend to actually spur a lot more growth and development in us and give us far more purpose than our own desires would have. I mean, I imagine anyone, if you look back at your age of like 6 years old, if you got everything that you ever wanted and nothing that was outside of that ever happened to you, that would be a very boring and perhaps sheltered life as well.
I love that. And it makes me think, I work as a therapist mainly with children and adolescents. And a lot of my kids and teens are super inflexible thinkers. So one thing that we often work on, we call it take out the old plan, put in the new plan. I thought I was going to this birthday party today. I was looking forward to it, but now it's snowing. It's not safe to go out. I have to stay home. The birthday party is canceled. So I love this kind of added idea of kind of what good is coming from this event that's completely out of your control, because of course, so much is out of our control in life. And I do this exercise with kids, and we come up with different scenarios, and we find, what's the bad part? What's the good part? But I love that in Kintsugi. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, I took French in middle school and high school, not Japanese, sadly. So I know I'm doing a terrible job with this, but I just love this added piece. Like, this could be a beautiful activity. I don't know that I have gold to help them mend things, but we could do something similar. And I think it's really, really cool. So as you're describing, you have this piece of pottery, it becomes broken, but in this Japanese tradition, it's mended. And not only is it mended, but there's gold that's added to it to, as I'm saying, make it even more precious, so that the item is different, but it's still useful, and it's still considered valuable and considered to be something that, what am I trying to say? I guess just considered to be beautiful and considered to be useful. So I'm wondering, Justin, if you've had experiences in life, because I think most of us have, I know I have, where you have had a difficult situation and you have grown and found maybe beauty in it.
100%. Yeah, I think we all have, traumatic life events, and it's all relative. And my own personal ones were, I had a suicide attempt at 17 that landed me in hospital, and then another one at age 20 that landed me in hospital as well. And, taking a look at that, and now I can speak about it because I've gone through these steps of, I'm aware of all the feelings that were around at that time as well. And I've accepted all of those feelings as there are no bad parts. And all of those things came about as some kind of expression of security validation, things to give me some type of meaning and purpose within my groups and to get attention. And ultimately, within myself now, the mending of it is the complete ownership of that. How can I use this? How can this be a beautiful thing? It is already, whether I want to acknowledge it or not, something that has influenced many, many, many people. But until I, take that ownership and I actually repair the cup with that gold and put the gold in myself, and by that, I mean, of course, healing those parts and seeing the benefits, the positives, will that actually then become something that others can appreciate too in part of my imperfect past. And I would say that the biggest part of that has been owning that and understanding that and actually wearing that like almost like I want to say a calling card or like a rally flag. And the amount of people that I've actually talked to about suicide who have opened up to me because I've shared that story. And, I'm completely comfortable with that story. I'm completely in full ownership of that story as well. And I can see how that happens. And what people are usually threatened with is usually basic human needs not being met. And so they think that they are to blame as well, that they are somehow responsible for their needs not being met, where they might not even know what their needs are. And so the beautiful thing, the gold, means that I'm actually having that conversation with a lot of people and then being able to at least give them a little bit of hope and direction. And then, of course, then they go on to seek help through therapy, for example.
It really sounds, Justin, that you are the embodiment of this Japanese tradition in that you're taking this trauma, but then I heard you talking about using it to help others and to share that experience and be so vulnerable. And thank you so much for your honesty and sharing that makes other people feel safe. It gives them permission to open up as well if maybe they've had feelings or thoughts of suicide or perhaps attempted it themselves. I think that's so beautiful and so powerful when we share of ourselves like that, because I think it helps remove that shame, especially for other people that maybe haven't moved as far along in their healing journey as it sure sounds like you have right now, where you offer them that to talk about it and be comfortable talking about it in a way where they can see it, it doesn't at least appear, you can speak to this if you'd like, it doesn't appear that you're feeling shame. And you certainly seem to be just really helping others from looking at some of the work that you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a lot in there about service to others, being, the appreciation and the aesthetic of, the beauty of something like Kintsugi. Things are usually appreciated not just by yourself, but when you're sharing it with someone else. And that's, one of the big imperatives there.
Absolutely. So don't just take that beautiful piece of pottery, fix it, add gold filament, and then hoard it away just for yourself.
Exactly.
But sharing it with others is really, I think, a beautiful gift. So as a licensed therapist, of course, I do very much believe in people who have been through traumatic experiences receiving therapy. I think that our research tells us somatic forms of therapy like somatic experiencing, where you're feeling into your body and you're moving your body, or EFT, emotional freedom technique. There is a trauma protocol that you can do with a certified and licensed individual, can be really, really effective too. And I won't do a deep dive because there are other forms as well. But one thing I know that you talk about, Justin, that I think is also really beautiful and helpful in healing trauma is really identifying the positives that come out of really challenging and sometimes traumatic experiences. How do you believe that people can do this? Because I think some people might be listening and say, like, well, I had this thing happen and it was so horrible. I can't find anything positive from it.
Yeah, it's totally understandable and natural for those types of situations too,
Yeah.
And we must be very careful too, not to put a positive spin on things without giving the right emotions time to breathe. So I like to work through my training in coaching was through core energy coaching. And so I use this model. And the very simple point is that taking up a very defensive position, for example, like, if your core feeling is that this happened to me, then that's where you need to be. And people, the people who are trained to be able to listen to you, to validate those kind of feelings, it makes sense that you would feel like that when you're coming from a place that you had no control. Of course, you're going to feel like that. But there's going to be a certain point where the client usually, or someone is going to say, I'm tired of feeling like this. And allowing that person or helping that person, go through those feelings and take responsibility and take ownership and finding ways to elevate that level is usually the first thing, when is the client ready to actually move forward? Or when is a person just feeling like, I'm tired of feeling like this?
Yeah.
It's so much energy. It's so much, it just takes so much to be like that. And so it's perfectly natural. There should be no positive spinning at those kinds of points because the positive spinning is almost covering up the pain. And so how much pain can a person handle as well at a time, which is why someone needs to work with a professional, because there are, of course, the idea of like re-traumatizing a person by looking at the pain.
Yes.
I always make the metaphor of someone trying to pick up, let's say 200 pounds of weights in the gym without doing any training.
Oh, that's a great metaphor. Yeah. Like, how's that going to work out? Not too well.
You're gonna be, with a hurt back in bed very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about like what, how can people do this? Usually it's by giving enough air and light to those negative emotions, which allow you to then get to a place which then you can start to say things like, well, this event raised my awareness to what, fill in the blank. This event has created a certain skill in me now to cope with this, which is, or it has put me in situations where I've met people who, and the idea is that you would never have been in those situations or developed those skills without some type of spontaneous, sometimes very traumatic events as well, that then go on to define our lives and our impact on people too.
Yeah.
And so the possibility to think about it like this is the last thing I'll say on it, which is very simply, you won't be able to see the benefits now. You won't. A lot of times, if you do think that there are benefits, you would probably in 2 years' time change your mind about what the benefits are. So a good practice to do is keep looking back at traumatic events that you've already worked through and seeing, how did I benefit from those? And you see the resiliency that are inside, that is inside most human beings as well, to then move forward. And it's usually the idea of like practice, go into the gym and lift up the weights on the stuff that's already in the past.
Yeah.
And then trust that you are going to be building up your emotional resiliency muscles, your positive outlook muscles on this. But when it's time, don't rush to the gym and do 16 hours every day. Give your muscles time to grow.
Yeah. Oh, I love so many points that you just made, Justin, but especially the one of you have to start with where you're at and you have to honor however you're feeling. And if you can cultivate self-compassion for being in the place that you are, and maybe it's even a huge leap to just open to the idea of that invitation of someday I might see this differently. That's a beautiful place to start. I had a teenager in session say to me recently something like, well, it's your job to make me happy. And I said, that's actually not my job, but I get it. I used to think when I was first a new therapist that was my job. And so when people would cry, I would feel so uncomfortable because I felt like I needed to fix it. But now I realize my job is to meet you where you're at and help you identify and get to where you want to go. And that we have to feel our pain and our feelings, whatever they are, along the way. That, oh man, I would like to just skip ahead sometimes to that beautiful place of, I get why this happened. And I'm so grateful that it did. But there are challenging moments all along that way. No way to skip forward. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit to, Justin, to that perfectionism piece that I think Kintsugi embodies too, right? You have this beautiful piece of pottery. It breaks. Now it's different. It's not perfect. It's patched up. It's different. And how we can take that idea and put it into our own life as well.
I think that's a beautiful process as well. And the first thing that comes to mind is this concept that perfection really doesn't exist. It's something that we strive for. And if we also think about our lives, you could say, oh, this moment is perfect. I never want to leave this particular moment.
Yeah.
And the amount of moments that we can take a snapshot of, probably after decades of living, they might make up an hour of our entire lives, or let's even be generous and say a week of our entire lives. And so the question that I go to is rather, how can I take every moment and look at it as this is perfect. Everything is perfect. It is beautiful. And so perfectionism, let's replace that, or invite ourselves to redefine. Perfectionism is the way that we like it. Well, if we just learn to like more things, then all of a sudden everything becomes beautiful, perfect, adventurous, exciting. So I'll share a personal goal at the moment. I'm trying to I'm trying to increase my pull-ups, for example. And there's a tendency, especially in our societies, to think once I get to my desired goal, I'll be okay.
I've arrived. Life's good forever and ever. Yeah.
But there's no one around to notice that or take, like, oh, Justin arrived, photos, news headline, Justin arrived, and there's no one around and so, okay, cool. Social media tells us, let's put it on, our Instagram, our TikToks, and raise awareness of others to ourselves, which is very much self-promoting. There's nothing wrong with self-promotion.
Yeah.
But if that's where we're getting our sense of self from, that can be quite dangerous as well. So how can I find that sense of self, that joy, the pleasure, the beauty in what I'm doing? And for me, a lot of it is, do I like doing the training versus having the results. And well, I really enjoy the training. And how can I learn to love the training more? How can I learn to enjoy building something that most people are scared of? They're very frustrated with, like my own business or something like that. Oh, I'm fighting with my wife at the moment. Well, how can I learn to find the beauty in this fight right now? Well, she's fighting with me because she cares about me. She's passionate. I am so close to her heart that I'm reminding her of the power dynamics between her and her old boyfriends or her parents or something like that. And seeing this is only happening because I'm close to her heart. And we're on the same team. And how can I remind her that we're on the same team? How can I find more beautiful ways? And so it's always got this to do with this concept of finding the beauty in the moments, especially the moments that we don't necessarily think as perfect moments.
Yeah. Oh, I love that too. I work part-time as a yoga and bar instructor as well. Bar, B-A-R-R-E, not drinking, right?
I'm familiar. My dad was a dance choreographer of
oh, you're kidding.
Cecchetti ballet and contemporary dance. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, so cool. So yeah, I think, you talk about yoga, or people often talk about it being the practice. It's not really, I did the perfect tree pose, I have arrived, life will be good forevermore. But, all of that time where you're wobbling and you're having trouble, and how do you experience those moments? What is that inner voice like talking to you? Can you be kind to yourself? Can you celebrate that you've showed up and you're doing the work, and know that every day looks different? And I would imagine with pull-ups too, right? I've never personally done a pull-up. Maybe someday. I haven't tried it, but I don't think it's one of those things that you just go, okay, oh, look, I can do that. So, yeah.
You might be surprised if you're doing yoga. You might be surprised at what you could do. But
all right, I'll go to a local playground and I'll get back to you. I'll let you know how that goes. So yeah, this is just such a beautiful concept. And I'm just so grateful, Justin, that you and I have connected and you've introduced it to me. And I'm already trying to think of ways that I can do this in my practice with kids and teens to kind of embody it without necessarily getting gold, because I imagine that's probably a little expensive to get. Have you ever actually done this? I'm curious.
No.
Okay.
I would love to do it with something like, let's say, if the wife and I decide to go and, as an anniversary gift, go to a pottery class or something like that. And then that's always back of mind of like, this piece means a lot to us because we put energy, our relationship with it, our relation to this object. And then it's just a means of keeping that relation going as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I look forward to doing it.
I think that's great. You could do that on a milestone anniversary, and then your next milestone anniversary, break it and then fix it with gold, right?
Yeah. Or you have some type of agreement that every time you fight, if you need to release that anger, that you throw the thing on the floor and then repair it.
That would be beautiful. I'm already just trying to imagine if I can do this with model magic. Have you ever used that?
Oh, I have not. No.
It's not a very fancy material. Crayola makes it. So I'll let you know how that goes for sure. Yeah. Is there anything else, Justin, that we haven't spoken about that you'd like to share? Or
there's one concept which comes back to me with emotional kintsugi, which is this idea of, if you look back at your life, or you ask people to think about their lives, what the most meaningful moments where they've pivoted or changed. And it tends to give rise to this idea that those moments don't come because we plan them. And most of the time, we never plan the best things in our lives. We react to them. And so I think that practicing kintsugi on yourself while you've got time means that your reaction to things is always going to be better when you're thrust into the realm of spontaneous things that are way out of your control. You're going to say, what is here? That's cool. Let me go there, rather than, be triggered into taking defensive positions and moving away from things. For example, you speak to people and you ask them, where did you meet your partner? And it's always going to be a spontaneous story.
Oh, sure.
And they never planned to meet that partner.
So rarely, right? I mean, I guess if it's like Tinder or something like that, but I think rarely is it planned.
Right. And the expectations are completely different and things like that. And then the way that that partnership also then leads their lives is going to be something completely different. If you had spoken to me when I was a teenager, I would never have guessed that I'd be living in the US, married, in suburbia, because my plans were like, oh, I'm going to live here in this place. And of course, life takes you wherever it will take you.
Absolutely. And where was it that you grew up, Justin?
I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. And then when I was 20, I left and I lived in London for 13 years on and off.
Wow.
But I spent a year in Argentina, a year in France, a year in Thailand, a year in Indonesia, and back and forth between London. And I've been in the US now for about 5 years. And that started off in California, and then we moved to Texas. So
wow.
It's been
you
a
just
ride.
never know where life will take you.
When
my clients say to me, I'm taking a break from relationships, I'm just going to focus on myself. I think I give them 2 months max before they tell me that now they've met someone really good, because I think that's just so often the way.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Life often leads us in directions we've never planned, and yet they can be amazing and beautiful. And I think, as we talk about acceptance, it can lead us to where we exactly need to be. Yes.
Amen. Yeah.
So can you tell us, Justin, who would be the right person to work with you? And then we can talk about where people can find you.
Absolutely. So I work with business leaders, usually people who are business owners, very successful and unfulfilled potential, very involved with personal development, but just finding that the stuff that's out there isn't holistic. There's always this personal development, I call it a McNugget, a little bite-sized kind of personal growth thing that you go to, and then afterwards you're still hungry for more. And so those are the people I work with. So it's usually,
awesome.
Men, let's say 30 to 40, 50 years old. Those are my typical clients.
Sounds good. And if people would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
My website, that's the easy one. So I'm sure it's going to be in the show notes below.
It absolutely will.
Yeah. And they can just book a quick 30-minute call. There's a no strings attached kind of exploration conversation just to get to know each other and just have a conversation about, what the needs are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. It's been such a pleasure to meet you and so much fun having this conversation with you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And thank you very much for everything that you're doing.
My pleasure.